And good afternoon, everyone. This is K-Man for Peace. Today we have a special guest. And can you tell the audience what your name is?
My name is Omer Jean Winborn.
Thank you, Woman Jean. Now, you said that you are a part of a couple, I won't even say a couple, a few genealogical societies that you've started and some other societies that now your exploration takes you into bringing the youth in. Can you begin by how you decided that you want to do it and what the names of those societies are?
I'm the president of Fred Hart Williams Genealogical Society, and also Cheryl Garnett and myself started the Washtenaw Genealogical, African American Genealogical Society through the Ypsilanti District Library. But we're no longer meeting.
Okay.
Because it was a lot on us both, because I'm the president of Fred Hart Williams and she's the vice president, so it was very hard on us.
Okay. So now, how did you all come to form the society and what was the motivation behind it?
We formed it because I was traveling from Ann Arbor to Detroit to get the African American genealogy and to hook up with the people that were my people in Detroit. And I thought, Cheryl and I thought it would be really nice. I had her come with me. It would be really nice to start one here in the city, and we did. Okay. And we went on for like 13 years.
Wow,
a lot of people didn't know about it. Yeah,
I really didn't. 13 years, that's a long
13
time.
13 years, and we just kind of dissolved it because we wanted people to take over, because it's hard on us. I'm an older lady and she's older, and trying to run back and forth from Detroit. But it's going to be a lot okay for the people here in Ypsilanti because we're on Zoom, and we've been on Zoom in Detroit since the pandemic.
Okay.
And so we're gradually going back in to maybe 1 or 2 times a year where we'll actually be in a physical building in Detroit. But right now we have members that are all over, which is good.
Okay. So now let me ask you, would it be something that you could possibly even consider and say reimagining that by those people that may have that time and place them in that organization and position and train them so that it could go on and go further? Because it sounds like it's a need for it, and because this generation, I don't know if you've been watching the news, but the teen takeovers, and I think for the most part those teens would be a great avenue to look towards, and those that have leadership skills. You have some that they want something to do and they want to know about their history and their family, and maybe their family doesn't know a lot about themselves, and that would be something they could take home and share with their family to get them excited about it. And maybe someone around in our age group would say, you know what, that sounds like something I would like to do, and that would possibly spread like wildfire through the community. What would you think about that?
That would be wonderful. That would be wonderful. We look at all ages, and we're really trying to figure out how to get teens to join and learn their genealogy, because right now it's a bunch of old people.
Okay.
You get to a certain age and then you start wondering who you are, but you need to find out earlier.
Yes.
And what we're doing, our emphasis for the year has been on passing our stories on to younger people. So we're picking younger people. I've already picked my storyteller in my family.
Okay.
She's my great niece, and she's 11.
Okay.
And
that's
so
wonderful.
we're passing it on, and that's what we're telling the people in our society now. We need to pass it on to the younger people.
I wanted to add what I did notice in my own personal research in the past. I've gone downtown to the library downtown, and there's a floor where there's just nothing but a bunch of history. And I went searching for my own personally, because I just was curious as to why we don't know a lot about ourselves. And I found there was a lot of oral history, and from the research that I found, that for African American people, most of our stories are oral because they never were really recorded properly, and if they were recorded, they were in documents of ships that logged us as insured commodities, if you will. And I found it so just disheartening that this the way things are, the insurance companies have built these models around imprisoning human beings, and we're just basically nameless. So with that, I thought there needs to be a new way to document going forward how we are leaving a legacy of knowledge behind for the children that are coming behind us. Because what I did discover, I have a son, he's 19 now, 20. And one day we were talking, and I say to him, I said, well, AC, what do you think about, he has friends that are of other nationalities, other colors, and they all get along great, and they come to my house, they have a ball, and I just find it so exciting. I'm like, so how do you guys, when you're interacting and talking about your history, how does that work? He says, well, Mom, by 2030, there'll be none of that, all of us are cool, and, those kinds of things. I said, but you have to think about the fact that eventually you'll all be business owners. You'll either be someone's employee or be someone's employer. You'll be an entrepreneur in those respects. How do you guys think that when these histories about what's happened and their families, have you guys talked about those kinds of things? And he says, well, Mom, we don't really talk about that because they don't teach us that in school. We don't have those kind of studies. And as a parent going to parent-teacher conference, I discovered that there was none. And so I went and asked my older child, his older sister. She says, well, Mom, we had to fight. We had Miss Ward, and she was at Huron High, and we loved her, and she really had us delve into a lot about our history, but also understanding that as a group of people in a community, we also have to work together and to not be angry about what their ancestors did to us in the past, but trying to kind of get that healing going forward in the future. But they took her out of school, so we're at a loss. And my daughter was one of those kids, like, I put myself in IP classes. She was taking my advice when I say go beyond what the teachers tell you to do. Go and do some research so that you not only get a knowledge of yourself, but you get a knowledge of the world and how business works and entrepreneurship and things of that nature. Because I'm one of the people that I believe in teaching them how to go about building rather than going about how to be an employee, because you need to know how things operate in order for you to function for life. So my question to you is, how can we get that bridge where we not only just have an oral history, but how going forward, besides the genealogical part of it, can we convey this and get it to the public of our people that don't know ourselves?
Well, I'll say to you, the most important history for African Americans is oral history. Mm-hmm. And the most important thing you can do is talk to your kids. Don't lecture them. Mm-hmm. Talk to them, have a conversation, mm-hmm. not an interrogation.
Okay.
And just make it like storytelling. Mm-hmm. Get your favorite thing to eat, mm-hmm. maybe music, mm-hmm. and sit down and talk. Mm-hmm. You tell them about your life.
Okay.
First.
Okay.
You talk to them about your life.
Okay.
And then they'll share with you some of the things that they liked or they'll be interested in mm-hmm. doing when they get grown or older or whatever they want to do. But start with the oral history.
Okay.
Because that's the most important part. I used to take dinners to my families mm-hmm. if I wanted to talk to them.
Right.
Because it was so hard mm-hmm. to speak to them.
Yes.
Because you know what? Our history's painful.
Yes, it is.
It is very painful.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times, a lot of pain happened within the families. Mm-hmm. And I used to have pieces of a story.
Okay.
From I would get the oldest people in my family first, mm-hmm. and I would go around and I'd sit and I'd have a conversation. The other intimidation is pencil and paper. Mm-hmm. That may seem like, oh my gosh, I have to write it down. No, have the conversation. Mm-hmm. When you leave that, write it down.
Right.
And then, if it's something that you don't understand, go back and have another conversation.
Okay.
I had an older family member that just passed away. And I grew, thank you. And when I grew up as a teenager, he was always around. I thought I knew him. Mm-hmm. But you know what? He asked me to cook him some neck bones, some greens, and black eyed peas. Mm-hmm. I hadn't cooked that in a while.
Right.
And you know what? Mm-hmm. The scent and the smell. And I sat down and I ate with him. Mm-hmm. And the stories he told me.
Right.
Just sitting,
Isn't it amazing?
Eating, and bringing back those memories of how my mom used to cook. Mm-hmm. He used to come over all the time. So the stories are the most important.
They are.
Just bits of a story can get you so much history.
Now, and I know you're right about that because, and it's funny you said that. I had a cousin, because I used to cook all the time, and I just believed in feeding people. And a lot of times I would think, well, they're not going to have time to cook. So I cooked these big pots of pinto beans, and like you said, neck bones, turkeys, whatever I decided to put together that day, and greens. And my family would always, when they would stop by, girl, it's always smelling so good in your house. What are you cooking? And I'd be like, oh, I'm frying some fish. And the fish guy would come by because we lived on Maxwell off of Mac in Detroit. And so he come down the street, get your fresh fish. He's hollering, 7 fish for $1. And I love me some white bass. So, and my peers of my age would laugh because I'm young. I know how to butterfly fish, head off split, and cook him too. So, and they'd be like, what are you going to do with the head stuff? I'm making some fish stock. And, they're like, girl, you stay in the kitchen. But I didn't stay in the kitchen because, on the side I sold Avon. I found creative ways to make money without being out there wild like everybody else want to go hang out wherever. And my fun part was when my work was done, that was my reward for myself if I hung out. But I had a cousin that he would always like, I can always depend on my cuz. And he'd pop up. He like, cuz, I know you cooking something. What you cooking? I'm like, man, I'm through cooking. What do you want? He like, I want some of your beans and I want some of your greens. And so he bring his friend with him. And then he'd start telling me stories about, my uncle. I went to the army and how he wanted to take all of us to Disney World. So those kinds of things that I wanted to learn about my aunts and my uncles. Like, I used to tell my mom, where's everybody at? Where's our cousins? Where? And, we would kind of run into family members. And we happened to the one family, that cousin's family. My mother had us signed up to go to the YMCA this particular summer. And I was bugging her all that year. Ma, where are our cousins at? She's like, well, I got to find my sisters. And so during the time, the story she gave me in the 60s where you couldn't have a man in the house. And if you did, they would bring the social services in, take the kids and put them in a home. And there that went. And so it happened to some of our family members, and that included my mother and me and my sister. So, and she says, I don't know why they would do that to us, but when you go to the suburbs, you see families in a house, see the mom, dad, people with jobs. But for us, it's different. I'm like, why is it different? And that, of course, ultimately led me to asking more questions and finding more family members. So waiting at Cadillac Harper and Gratiot in front of the YMCA there, we're waiting to get on the bus to go to Camp Cavell, and I'm all excited. I can't wait to go to camp because I went the year before and I learned archery and horseback rode because I like stuff like that. And she says, Karen, come over here. I'm like, but Mom, we got to get on the bus. No, come here. This is your cousin Tanya. This is your cousin Felicia. I'm like, oh, these are our real cousins? And, I'm all excited, so I can't wait to get to know them. And that is one of the ways that I got some of the oral history about some of our aunts. And my aunt had these photo albums. And photo albums I found were a good way for memory because some of the older generation don't remember a lot. And so she's got stacks of them. I mean, I'm like, I can't wait to explore. And when we got back from camp, somebody broke in the house, stole the stuff, album's gone. So from her memory, we started getting information. So now my next question is, how do we go to name the first organization and the address and phone number that people can get in contact with someone there so that they can start their journey in finding out their family history, and then the next organization that you started, so that if they don't see something there, they can find out the information they want. They can go to the next organization and maybe find out what they want or what they're looking for there.
I've been teaching a class at the community college, and they've had to cancel it every time. And if you're over a certain age, you don't have to pay. Okay. And you should start with the Washtenaw Community College and taking an introduction to genealogy. Okay. And then genealogy and history go hand in hand. Okay. But start with like the community college that teaches, and I'm hopefully teaching it in the fall. Okay. And then also in the summer, then follow up, join an organization. Mm-hmm. And then I do I help people, you know, through the library, the Ypsilanti District Library. You know, I get people started.
Okay.
I'm not doing it, but I'll show you how to do it.
Okay.
You know, if you really want help.
Okay.
The second part of our story that's important that I, you know, to tell is not only the oral history, but learn how to write it down.
That's right.
Write it. Get a journal. You just told me some wonderful stories about your food and cooking, and that's something that you could pass on to your kids. But you know, they didn't know about all the people that would come to your house and eat and stuff. Tell them that.
Okay.
Can you imagine the storytelling that came about when women were just, remember how we used to pick beans with their family members to sit there, bushel of beans? You got stories about that.
I used to have to go and pick the speckled beans out the garden and help learn how to cook them. And I love speckled beans. Can't find them now today, but I went to one place over here and they were looking at me like, huh, what are you talking about? And I'm like, y'all never heard of speckled beans? And that's where I got the story about the red dirt down in the South, and who ended up caring for us, and we ended up going back to our mother. But just to go back,